So I have introduced this for this particular segment, a quick rapid questions for you. Currently, which book are you reading, and why would you recommend to our viewers?
So I like to read quite a bit. The book which I'm reading currently, and I wish I had read it sometimes earlier. I'd heard a lot about it, but somehow never got around to reading it. Is the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, which is basically a compilation of his tweets and writings by someone called Eric Jorgensen. I think it's a great book. I would encourage folks to read it sooner rather than later. I think there are some great lessons and wisdom for generally sort of leading a better, smarter life. So I would highly recommend that.
So if you want to define Dhruv Agarwal in four adjectives, what it would be?
Passionate, empathetic, ambitious, tenacious.
That's great. So if you need to choose one, which one would you pick to invest apart, of course, from the real estate domain, cryptocurrency, stock market, or mutual funds?
This is not meant to be investment advice. I think for smart investors, I think they should look at diversifying risk and having a balanced portfolio. But I know what where you're sort of leading to. I do believe in crypto as a legitimate asset class and something people should consider as part of the portfolio. So I'm pretty bullish on that asset class going forward. I know things have not panned out as well in recent times, but I'm still a believer. But as I said, this is not meant to be any investment advice here. So people got to make their own judgments and their own decisions.
True. So what is the best advice that you have ever received from your mentor? It can be recently or from the time you have started your journey and it's been there with you. You have followed that advice throughout.
Look, I mean, mentors have obviously, shared lots and lots of wisdom, and which is why I always tell people that have a mentor.
Yeah.
Because these are people who you can speak to completely, openly. They've seen the movie, which is, sort of been played before, and can give you advice, from their experience. So please do have a mentor. I think the best advice I've received, and I've always found it hard to actually implement that, is about really the art of saying no, right? We as people tend to want to do everything, and sometimes spread ourselves too thin. Our attention gets divided.
True.
And we don't end up doing anything very well. So whether it's in terms of what you're doing as a business, what you're doing in life, I think it's important to focus and work on something which you're truly passionate about, which excites you, and which gets you bang for the buck. Otherwise, you get distracted when you have too many things on your plate. So I always am a great believer of focus, and that's been something which I've found hard to implement, but I've learned over the years. But this is some of the best advice I got from my mentors.
That's actually the best advice, to say no. So what is the worst advice that you have ever received?
I think it's a great question. I don't think any advice is really bad. Advice is always contextual. People share advice based on their own experiences, their perception of the situation which you're in, for which you're seeking advice. So really, it's about listening to people, assimilating what they are saying, and then reflecting on that, and then making your own decision. So in that sense, no advice is ever bad. It's like not asking for advice, I think, is worse than any advice which is given to you. So always seek out advice, assimilate, and then implement and make the judgment call. No advice is really bad. It's always contextual.
True. So this might sound a bit scandalous, but I need to know from you, if you have to rank these prop tech companies in terms of better leadership or future, namely Anrock, Square Yards, Broker Network, Prop Tiger, and Investor Clinic.
So look, obviously, I don't want to comment on Prop Tiger because it's it's basically run under my leadership. But frankly, each of the companies you named are excellent companies doing some great stuff for the ecosystem, all led by very capable leaders who I respect, and from whom I've learned a lot. One of the things which I always tell people is be curious, always keep learning, and there's never a good or a bad place to learn, and you can always learn something from someone. So I've seen what these leaders have done in their various businesses, and I've tried to learn as much as I can from all of them. So I would say huge respect for each of these businesses and their leadership.
So, if you are an investor and you have 1 crore, where would you invest? Commercial, residential, land plot, or weekend homes? And in which city? Of course, it's not meant for the home buyers to exactly do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Again, look, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not advisory. It's not meant to be advice because again, it's very situational depending on. I mean, if today you're buying your first home, then obviously I'll say that buy it close to where you're working and where you see yourself longer term. And it's never a bad time to buy a home to live in. If I were to buy a home, coming very personally, I would possibly, buy it somewhere, in Goa. I think a great place to sort of unwind. Always a safe place to be in if something goes wrong, the way it went during COVID. That's what I would do personally. But again, as I said, home buying is very personal, and very situational. So everybody has to look at their own circumstance. But my fundamental belief is, if you don't own a home, do go out and buy your first home. It's never a bad time. Interest rates, whether they're going up or down, prices, whether they're up or down, ultimately you want to live in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Always the right time to do it.
I thought you would answer Kolkata as a city you're from. So, stating Kolkata, which is the best thing you like about that city?
Kolkata, the
Yeah.
food, without a doubt. I mean, even when I go now, that's what I'm doing. Morning till evening. I do spend time with my parents, but unfortunately, I spend more time outside the home.
Okay.
Eating all the stuff I grew up with. So
Yeah.
clearly, I think it's a foodie's paradise.
So, name 3 favorite dishes of yours then in Kolkata.
Interesting. So I love the biryani, which is, I think, very unique. I think it's the only biryani probably in India which has potatoes in it, which gives it a unique taste. Second thing I would say is jhalmuri. Again, something which is unique to Kolkata, which I love. And third, I would say is, I didn't really grow up eating fish, but I would say that it's prawn malai curry and rice.
Okay. Okay. So, I want to ask, last not the least, who has been your role model and why?
So, again, I don't have a single role model. As I mentioned earlier, I always try and look at people who've done things in life, who've achieved something more than what I have, and what I can learn from them. And different leaders have different things to teach. And as I said, you can learn anything from anyone. Someone doesn't have to be supremely successful, for you to learn from, right? I mean, people who go about doing daily things in their life sometimes can teach you big lessons. So for me, I don't have a single role model, but I'm very, very curious in terms of observing people and learning from their good habits, and also then learning from what I believe they don't necessarily do very well, because that's also a great learning.
Yeah.
In terms of what not to do. So in that sense, I don't believe in a single role model, because sometimes it also limits your aspiration to that individual.
Yeah.
So I think you have to really evolve into the best version of yourself. And that, I think, the best way to do it is by learning from all quarters, from successful people and not so successful people.
True. But coming from a business background, your business family background, in early age, would you say your role model was your father?
Oh, absolutely. Like, in terms of my entire value system and, who I am as an individual and the way I built my organization, I would say I've learned significantly from him. In terms of being empathetic, in terms of not just focused on performance, but also how you achieve that performance. It's not just, what you do, but how you do it, which is very important. That I've learned.